Hello, everybody. Welcome to Debut Spotlight on a Mighty Blaze. The Blaze was founded in 2020 when COVID-19 extinguished the traditional in-person book tour. Our New York Times bestselling authors and co-founders, Jenna and Caroline Levitt, joined forces to promote books coming out. And we've just kept going from there. This is Debut Spotlight, where we highlight amazing debut authors. I'm ANDI RAND, one half of the host of Debut Spotlight. This week we have the amazing author, Jenna Satterthwaite. I swear I had that right.
Oh, you got it the second time.
Author of Made for You, which I can show with this really beautiful cover. Yes. Jenna grew up in Spain, lived briefly in France, and is now settled in Chicago with her husband and kids. She has quite a few accolades. You studied guitar at a conservatory, which is incredibly cool. You have a BAs in English Lit and French, so a very accomplished person. And Made for You is your debut novel from Mira/HarperCollins. And Made for You is a kind of sci-fi thriller about a very humanoid, realistic android that they call Synths, who competes on The Bachelor. Well, not The Bachelor, a show similar to it called The Proposal, wins and seemingly gets her dream life, but then her husband goes missing about a year and a half after. And everybody thinks she did it, and she has to figure it out. So it's a very compelling little thriller with a lot of cool sci-fi elements and questions about humanity and all of that exciting stuff. But hello, Jenna. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great. I'm excited to be chatting with you.
Yes. How has your tour been for your debut novel?
Um, you know, good. I did a really fun event on launch day at City Lit Books here in Chicago, and that was the highlight of debut week. I loved the experience of just being in a bookstore, meeting the booksellers in person for the first time, like people who are going to be, selling this book. And then friends and family showed up, people from Twitter or X who didn't really know me, like they showed up. I mean, it was just such a delightful and unexpected combination of people. So it felt super celebratory. We had cupcakes and wine, and it was very fun. So that, when I think of debut week, like that is the huge, wonderful, positive part amidst honestly some anxiety. Debut week is
I'm sure
not a huge fan. It's very stressful. But the party at City Lit was a huge thumbs up. Very fun.
Yeah, it must be crazy. You have this book that's just yours and your editors and the people you choose for so long, and now it's just out into the world where everybody can read it and hopefully love it. I loved reading it.
Fingers crossed.
It is it's a really fun twist on kind of sci-fi, because it's not your traditional robot novel that we think of that's just really about being a robot, not to insult other robot media, which I love a lot of. But I liked how this was a thriller at the same time. What made you want to kind of combine these elements? Because I don't know if I've seen a lot of similar books to this.
I love hearing that. Originally, I mean, to me, the thriller is the plot is a thriller plot. The fact that there's this synthetic main character, it's not incidental, it's, important to the plot. But when I was thinking about how to structure it, I really wanted to write a fairly traditionally structured thriller with some fun twists and surprises. And there was just this one twist. But other than that, it's set in the real world and kind of current America as I understand it. And so it didn't feel like I had to come up with too much. I feel like real sci-fi writers are inventing whole worlds and religious systems and political systems. And this was I felt a little, cheater sci-fi. We're going to leave it here. I'm going to toss in this one thing that's a little different. And then we're going to go with murder, because murder is fun. I like
it's compelling.
And it's fun for me to read about as a reader. And I wanted to take a shot at writing it, so I did.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say not real sci-fi. I mean, sci-fi is I know people split it into hard and soft sci-fi, where hard is it's on the alien planet, and there's spaceships, which is also amazing, but I don't think softer sci-fi is any less real. It's like urban slipstream fantasy versus high fantasy. They're all part of the same beautiful world.
Absolutely. That was just me being kind of like, I've always thought of sci-fi writers as these hugely imaginative, future-facing like giants, and I was like, well, I'm gonna write a murder mystery.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you're right. It is sci-fi. I'm gonna embrace that.
Yeah. And I think it's a very exciting and, like I said, unique sci-fi take, because I don't think I've seen a lot of sci-fi thrillers in general and sci-fi thrillers that focus on androids / robots, whatever you want to call them, as main characters, which was really exciting for me. And I also found it really interesting. You did a great job utilizing an android main character, a main character who wasn't entirely human in the way we traditionally think of it, to also discuss a lot of women's issues. Was that something that was always in your head, or was that something that kind of just came up naturally?
Oh, great question. I could go on and on about this, so cut me off if I wax too eloquent. But this one for me started with pure plot. I had just read a fantastic YA sci-fi called The Ones We're Meant to Find. It's about these two sisters. It is just a gorgeous, gorgeous book, and I highly recommend it. But that introduced to my mind the idea of, like, you know, an android or robot who looks indistinguishable from a human. So I was just kicking around in my brain. And I was watching Love is Blind at the time.
Yeah.
Not quite The Bachelor, but adjacent.
Yes.
And I was thinking about all that drama. And one day as I was taking my little walk on my break from work, those two ideas came together. And I'd been wanting to write something with murder for a while. And I was like, wait, what if we take the human-looking robot and then we put her on a reality love TV show, and then let's kill someone. And I didn't know who was going to die or who did it or anything, but just that fun idea of, I mean, you know, the one who's different. What is that experience like for her competing against human women? And it started with just plot. And this always happens to me when I write books. It starts with just a fun idea, and then it just takes on a life of its own as I start writing everything that I'm dealing with in my own life at the time, and processing in terms of the world and my place in it, or various traumas that have come my way. It just works its way into whatever project I'm working on. And this one happened to be, you know, women and our place in the world, and some things happening in the world these past years. I mean, these past centuries, millennia. Gosh. I was processing at the time for various reasons, and I was also dealing with a lot of grief. My sister was dying of cancer at the time, and a lot of my, I guess, beliefs in God that I had held before, I was calling all of that into question. So all of that stuff kind of worked itself out as I walked through this, I think, very fun plot. I don't think of it as a heavy book, but for me, it was kind of the threshing floor for working through a lot of those heavy things within myself. Does that answer your question?
No, I think it does, and it makes a lot of sense. And I think cyborgs, androids, cyborgs are a different thing, are a great, like, way to examine the human condition, and, like, how do we treat these things we create who look exactly like us in this theoretical space. We haven't quite got there with the ones we have in real life. Maybe we will. How do we treat these things that are basically a mirror of humanity? I think is a really interesting question to delve into. I also know there's a cyborg manifesto by Donna J. Haraway that founded what a lot of people call cyborg feminism, that was about arguing about women as cyborgs inherently in society, which it's very complicated. I can't say I totally fully understand.
Fascinating. I'll have to look up. I haven't heard of that before, so I'm going to have to do some Googling after this.
No, it's a very fascinating thing that your book made me think a lot about, because it is, in a way, you know, just her being a synth is a good metaphor. She was made for Josh, who is the bachelor that she's competing for on the reality TV show. And she doesn't know who she'd be if she doesn't win, if she doesn't get him, quote unquote, if she doesn't stay married to him. And I think that's also a really fascinating comparison to how women's lives were for so much of history, of like, you are made to get married to a man, to have children with him. if you don't choose that, are you still a woman? Are you still worthwhile to society? I think it's just such a natural comparison.
Yeah, and it was fun to get into that. I think for me, I was raised in a more conservative thinking kind of surroundings, and I didn't really question. I don't think I was even aware of the patriarchy or had that name for it for quite a long time. And it really took, I guess, to deconstruct those views took me going through pain, which sucks. And I feel like that's the story of a lot of people's turning points when it comes to ideas and viewpoints. We're not always able to engage just on a mental level when we're forced to go through it, and then we see it because we suffered. That's when we're able to kind of open our eyes and see something that was there all along, but we just didn't have a name for it before. And when we don't have names for things, they, of course, they still exist, but we can't really engage with that in the same way. So I think for me, Julia's journey of deconstructing that view that she's created with, that she wakes up with, of I was made for this. And she likes that. Like, she's not anti that. She's all about it. She is attracted to Josh. She's thrilled by this potential fairy tale journey she's going to get to have. And there's really no reason to question that until pain enters in. And that's very much my story with feminism. And, you know, when I was even a teenager, granted, I didn't grow up in the States, so some of my paradigms are a bit different, but I wasn't out there calling myself a feminist. I just hadn't engaged with that yet. And it took really till my later teens, even early 20s, and experiencing workplace wage discrimination. It's like, wait a minute. What is going on? What is actually going on here? And it started a long journey for me of kind of deconstructing worldviews that I had never questioned before about my place as a woman and what the trajectory of my life should look like. And my husband, we met when we were 18 in college. We were just little babies exploring the big world we were in and figuring out what we thought about it. And he's really taken that journey with me. And I always like to give him credit and say when I met him, he was like, yeah, I'm a feminist. And I was like, oh, you are? Well, what does that mean? he beat me to it. And really, you know, I'm 41 now. We've been married for a heck of a long time. And I just love that we've been on that journey as a couple, examining the roles that we expected to inhabit in our lives and seeing how those didn't work for us and making new ones. So we have a little bit of an untraditional household now. He's the stay-at-home dad. I'm the breadwinner, which, you know, isn't totally unheard of, but is not the norm still, I would say. And I'm really grateful for the ways that our life has made us just crack those boxes, I guess, a little bit and be more free.
It's always great when you have a partner who will take those leaps with you, you know, because if you can't grow and change in a relationship, it's probably going to be quite a difficult relationship to maintain because people always change. Even Julia.
And taking it back to the novel, you know, she is evolving dramatically. And confronting tons of difficulty and changing as she navigates it. But she's with a partner who maybe isn't changing so much. He has his box, he's in it. And so they really start aligned, and you see that kind of devolve over the course of the book. Not spoiling anything, I hope, by saying that.
I mean, I think Julia and Josh not having the fairy tale marriage that she imagined at the beginning is not a spoiler. It's kind of where we start off seeing.
So true.
Which it's also told in two different timelines, which is an exciting narrative structure. We see Julia from right when she wakes up and then immediately walks on set of the proposal to when just after Josh has gone missing and she's realizing that he is missing. What made you decide to tell it in these dual timelines instead of, you know, starting at the beginning or leaving out the backstory and starting just at the present timeline?
That's a good question. I hope I can answer it in a good way. The novel came together spontaneously, which was unexpected. I thought I was going to have to structure it out really carefully,
Mm-hmm.
because I'd never done dual timelines. And
Yeah.
the reason it was in my mind to do dual timelines is just mainly because there's such a huge time gap
Yeah.
between her time on the proposal show, and her time investigating her husband's disappearance.
Mm-hmm.
It just felt awkward. If you start with just the reality TV portion, then we're just going to switch and it's going to feel like a totally different book in the second half.
Yeah.
So it felt, I think, obvious to me that I wanted to do then and now scenes and kind of interlace them. And my first plan for structuring this was I'm going to write the like disappearance mystery first and do
Mm-hmm.
the murder parts because I need to figure out who killed who and why, which
Yeah.
I didn't know when I started writing.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I figure that out, I'll do a second writing session or month or however long and intersperse some proposal scenes that kind of
Mm-hmm.
give some hints and clues and that make sense. So that was what I set out to do, but that's
Yeah.
not what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I started writing with her waking up and then went to the present. And then I just went back to the past and I just wrote it in order,
Mm-hmm.
with no plan. And that rarely happens for me, where it
Yeah.
just kind of comes out, I guess, quote unquote, like right the first time. I've written
Mm-hmm.
plenty of novels where it's just a mess and revisions are a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit of a miracle that this one just kind of flowed, and the timelines end up kind of colliding at the end for the climax, and that just happened by itself, which I
Yeah.
was like, yes, finally something worked, because I've written a lot of books that have not worked. So
No, you have to write a lot of things that don't work to get the practice in to write the stuff that does work.
yes, maybe it wasn't so spontaneous. Maybe there were a few practice books.
Yes.
There were like 8 practice books before that. So
Yeah, I mean, that's just a sign that you worked really hard for this, which
well,
is amazing.
thank you.
Yeah. And that's something I love seeing the two timelines. And there is a lot. I'm one of those people who's annoying to like watch movies with because I try to guess the twists as much as I possibly can.
Uh-huh.
Because,
You're one of those.
yes, I'm trying to pick up on all the foreshadowing. My father was a huge guy who did that too, and we'd watch stuff together. So I think, and sometimes from common tropes you can just pick it out, like if you're watching a police procedural and there's like a weirdly big actor in a small role, you're like, oh, that's probably the killer, because why else are they here if they're not going to get the big role?
Why are they going to pay this actor all that
Yeah,
money to just
yeah, have what be a suspect and then not come back. But there was a lot I definitely did not see coming in this, which I won't go into because I do not want to spoil anything for the readers who hopefully will buy this and then also not see it coming.
I'm
But
so glad. I love hearing that people were surprised. I feel like any thriller writer, these are our questions. As we're writing it, it seems so obvious to us. And there's that moment where we're like, oh no, did I just write something that everyone's going to see coming from page 1? So it's very gratifying to hear that people have been surprised and to hear that you were surprised. Yay!
No, it was something where I was updating my partner about the book because I just tell him about books I read, as many of us do. And he was like, dang, I really didn't see that coming either from like what you told me about this book. So it took us both, him secondhand, by surprise. Yeah, I loved, there are 3 synths in this book, 3 like just in existence, so quite a small group. And Christy and Crystal, or Crystal, I'm not sure how she would pronounce it.
You got Christy and Crystal. Yep.
Yes, they're the other 2 who had kind of a similar purpose of being made for somebody and being married to them, who are in their own thing. I got kind of a Kardashian vibe from them.
Oh,
Was
yeah.
that kind of on purpose? Yeah.
Yeah, they're in the public eye. They're having fun with it. They also go through various traumas, but they're just those big personalities, and they're not afraid to be upfront, outspoken. And what I wanted to do with Julia as the third synth is to make her not like that at all, and to kind of highlight. I feel like minorities of any kind get so much pressure to perform for the group and are held almost accountable for whatever minority group they belong to, which is unfair, No,
Yeah.
let's not do that. So I kind of wanted to put that pressure on Julia as part of kind of like a super minority. She's one of 3 synths in the whole world. And so it was fun in that twisted authorly way to kind of turn the screws on her of like, you need to be likable because you're like 33% of this population. And if people don't like you, that makes a big impact on future opinions towards synthetic people. So I really wanted her to be an every woman who just doesn't want that. She just wants, almost like, to put it simply, like the American dream. She wants like a partner who loves her and a baby and like a cute little house in a safe place with maybe a garden and some chickens or whatever. So she really wants, I feel like what most of us want some version of that. Of course, it can look different in many ways, but we all want belonging, security, love, safety, family, and friends, not to be persecuted. And so just showing her have that really relatable set of dreams, that was appealing to me too. Even though she's a synthetic woman, I didn't want to write a robot. I wanted to write an every woman. Like, this is what people in general want. And now watch her not get it because she's different.
Yeah, which seeing the harassment she goes through with people, you know, vandalizing their house, taking out a billboard to insult her specifically, which is stuff that has happened to people in real life when they move to communities that just aren't welcoming, which is unfortunate that things like that, I think, still happen. But it felt very realistic, like people would absolutely be doing that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Like, the second we get there, people are going to start getting on them. I also thought it was a really interesting discussion, and it's kind of almost tangential to the main plot, where I think it's an interview with Andy, who Andy is the creator of Julia, and he is not the creator of Christy and Crystal. They are created by a different company. Andy's like a smaller group, and he's more synth rights. He seems like the cooler one, or at least that's how he tries to portray himself, where it's like a talk show he's on, and he's discussing making synths for jobs. And there's this kind of idea of like, is it fair to make a synth who's created to be a surgeon versus a human being who studied for however long in medical school and a residency and a fellowship and all of that education? And was that kind of on your mind as well? Because I think it's a similar idea comes to Julia of like, just women are being replaced because there's these perfect robot women who can be made for you, like a perfect surgeon who can be made to replace a human surgeon.
Yeah, I mean, that interview was my little cheater way of saying, okay, let's press pause on the thriller and murder mystery, and let's just like think for a minute about the implications of this. So I'll just put it in an interview format and ask some questions that I'm interested in answering, and topics that I'm interested in thinking about, and put them out there as food for thought for hopefully for it to gnaw at readers' brains a little bit. I mean, I know this is on everyone's mind these days, especially. I mean, I'm part of kind of the publishing world talk, so I see so much about AI. And I mean, there are lawsuits on AI being fed people's books without their permission to teach the AI. And there's been scandal after scandal of cover art secretly using AI to do it, and people freak out, rightfully so. So yeah, there's just a lot of this talk now of, I think, AI replacing artists in particular. But what about surgeons, or what about any other role? Really, it's just something that it's interesting to consider. Is the point especially with the surgeons, just saving lives, having the highest rate of life saving? Because those are high stakes. Saving a life is almost as high stakes as it can get. And I mean, we use robotics in surgery now, so it's there to a certain extent, but I just find it fascinating. And the other fun thing that I love about being a novelist as opposed to a nonfiction writer is I don't really have to answer these. I don't have to come in at the end of the little interview section or the book and really make any kind of statement. Not that I don't have opinions, but what novels have the power to do is to present a topic and just kind of turn it around for readers. And let's look at it from this angle. And then let's look at it from this angle. And that's a huge delight for me when I read
Yeah.
is, oh, I've never thought about it from this side of things, or I never imagined this. It builds empathy and thoughtfulness. And I hope I've done a little bit of that with this book, turning these issues around.
And I think you did, because I think even though probably in real life, I'm not going to pretend like I know that, we're farther away from super realistic androids coming out onto the market, so to speak. I don't know how close we are. I'm not going to pretend that I have that knowledge. Yeah, but I think it's an interesting thing to wrestle with. And I mean, it's something we've been wrestling with since I think the 1920s, when the word robot entered the lexicon through a Czech play, which I know about because I was in a production of this play. So I'm not just that keyed in, but it's called Rossum's Universal Robots, and it was a Czech play written in the 1920s. And robot actually means serf in Czech, and that's where that word comes from. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating thing that I think has shown our attitudes towards robots the whole time. That the word robot literally means serf in a different language. So,
oh man, I wish I had known that when I was drafting this book. I could have brought that in somehow.
Yeah, I recommend checking out RUR is usually what it's called as a nickname, but Rossum's Universal Robots. It's the first use of robot. It's one of the first robot rights productions out there, and it's cool that it happened in a play. I'm a theater person, as I mentioned to you before, and I've mentioned many times on this show. So I love combining the two worlds.
Super cool. Yeah, I'm making a little mental note to check that out later.
Yeah, and I think it's something that plays very interesting, that Julia wants kind of rights for herself, but she also doesn't want to be an advocate. She doesn't want to be the person in the public eye like Christy and Crystal. She doesn't want to have to make her money by having all these cameras still invading her life, even though she was created to go on camera. She doesn't really want that anymore. And it's this conflict that people seem to just expect her to be in the public eye and set a good example. Like, she talks about her Instagram. She's like, I have to post looking relatable and tired so people will see that I'm just like them and I'm not, this unstoppable machine.
I think, I mean, to me, that was, not everyone wants to be an activist. And even laying aside any discussions about our ethical obligations, when, leaving all of that aside, kind of like with the American dream thing, most people just want to live a kind of like quiet, comfortable, happy life.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of minorities especially are forced into the limelight, and expected to do more and fight harder. And I just, the exhaustion of that and the unfairness of that is something that I, again, kind of enjoyed putting Julia through in that twisted way where we make our characters suffer. But
No, and it's interesting because this comes up in the book where Julia thinks about how she was made, where she was made with dampeners that kind of make her more human, where she can get tired, she has to eat, she can get, exhausted, she can need a break, she can lose focus, and that exists to kind of, and she can get hurt and not heal right away and feel just as much pain as anyone else. And that's, as a human being, we don't really have an option, and that just being our creatures. But with her, she has to know, like, oh, someone designed me so I would feel pain, so I'd get tired. And it was funny because Julia thinks about this and whether or not that's fair and whether or not she wants it throughout the book, which is funny because at the beginning I was like, if I was an android and I was desired to be tired, I would be so mad about it. I'd be like, take this off right now. And then I'd get shut down for being a danger or something. But that would be my first thought. I'd be like, get rid of this.
That was one of probably the themes in the book that's closest to my heart, is this, I guess, topic of weakness and the weakness that's built into us. Of course, Julia's different because we know that Andy built it into her. Andy and his team constructed her to feel pain so that she could be as close to the human experience as possible. But I think, for anyone who's gone through seasons of extreme grief and pain, I think we still have those questions. Like, why do I have to suffer so much?
Yeah.
Is there a point? It feels, I don't know, unfair isn't quite the right word, but this book I mentioned earlier was born out of, well, fun ideas colliding, but it was
Yeah.
written during a time of, personal tragedy. My sister was dying.
Mm-hmm.
She ended up dying August of 2022. So I don't know, a couple of months after I finished the book. And gosh, her cancer journey was just short of 4 years. It was 3 years and 8 months. It was a long, long journey with so many ups and downs. I mean, we could talk for days about
Yeah.
all of the drama. And, there was cancer, but then there was kidney failure because they gave her this drug, and it was just thing after thing after thing. And, we're soulmates, me and my two sisters. And so walking through that with my youngest sister just wrenched me apart, and it drove me into the dust. I mean, I was a mental wreck and really hit rock bottom in a way that I never had before. So I was grappling with, who am I? Because I thought prior to the cancer experience that I was strong. You hear those slogans in the culture, like, the strength is within you, like, you're strong, you can do it, or da 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 da. And I think I'm not mocking those. There is some truth there. Like, we do have a lot of strength we can pull on. And there's more in us than we realize, which is very awesome. But during that time, I encountered a hard limit within myself that I never encountered before. And it was terrifying because I did believe I had unlimited strength. I mean, not really. Obviously, I need sleep and food, and sometimes I just have to go cry. But in general, I felt capable and able to do what I needed to do. And I just never crashed up against the wall of my own weakness before. So that's really where that part of Julia's story came in. I wanted to break her down because I had just broken down, and I wanted to take her to the limit and have her be pissed because I was pissed.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up believing in God. I believe in him still, though my, thoughts about how all that works have changed dramatically. Which is a whole other thing we can talk about for days and days, but won't go there now. But I was pissed at God. Like, why that? What? WTF? Like, you say you're love, people say you're love, but this isn't love. This is hell. This is horrible. And I don't, I always say, like, it's not a new question. How could there be a good God and pain in the world? It's an age-old question. But I really think you can't ask that in a real way until you're there, until you're at rock bottom and you're going through that pain. And then suddenly you realize that it doesn't make sense and that no, philosophical argument can make sense of it. And so that was Julia's journey, starting, happy with herself on what she thought was going to be a positive journey, starting to realize, wait, I don't like pain. And why exactly do I have to go through this pain? Is there a point?
Yeah.
Why do I have to go through labor pain to give birth to my daughter?
Yes.
Having her start to have kind of those light questions, and then they get heavier and heavier and heavier as the book progresses, and she gets driven down just further and further and further, and to the point where she's like, oh, my creator might be evil, which is what I felt. My sister's cancer. Oh God, you might be a sadist. Actually, I'm terrified. Like, I don't know what's going on. I can't reconcile this pain and someone intentionally making me knowing that I would feel this. Can't do it. I'm a mom. I would never do that to my kids. So how do I think about that? And it was very satisfying to really just like regurgitate my trauma onto the page and my questions. And I can't see God. I can yell at him in my bedroom and hope he hears, but I can't, throw a punch at his face. But Julia and Andy in my book, they can meet. And she can confront him and she can ask those questions and demand answers. And so that was so satisfying to write because it was my anger at God, basically.
No, and I do think that's something, though I haven't had any experiences quite like what you've had. I've been in places where it's been like a rock bottom that I didn't think I'd get to, and been like, yeah, why is this happening to me and how? And, you know, asking those questions. And the idea of getting to actually ask that, like, why did you make this happen to me? Why did you create me knowing this would happen to feel this pain? Which Julia really gets to ask that. And it's, I think, very cathartic to watch her ask that and watch how that scene unfolds, in my opinion.
Yeah, I won't say much because it is a spoiler, so
yes.
I won't. But from a personal standpoint, that was one of the most fun scenes to write. Not fun like hee hee hee, but fun like
yeah.
Like I loved writing that scene.
Oh, I love reading it. I think once people get there in the book, it's a very cathartic moment, I think, for Julia, just as a character, but also I think for everybody reading it who wishes they could get to have that opportunity to have Julia really seize on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love writing is total therapy. I don't know if it is for everyone, but every time I write a book, it's just like a whole therapy session that goes on for months. And the crap that I didn't even know was in there just starts to come out. So I loved writing this book in particular because I really needed therapy at that moment in my life. But it happens every time somehow, which is just so fun.
Yeah, and that's the thing I love about sci-fi stories, fantasy stories, is that sometimes they can be such a perfect metaphor for the human conditions. These things that aren't quite real can really perfectly articulate the human experience.
Yes.
That's why I love those genres so much. They're just, they're so easy to connect with, I think, you know, and I think that's a good thing that we can read a book and really connect to Julia, who is this synth, who is so different and so similar to human beings at the same time, and really feel for her and see ourselves in her.
Yeah. And that just her desire, I think, within the context of weakness for strength, I think, I hope will be relatable to a lot of people. Especially there's the motherhood aspect, which is pretty significant throughout the story. She has a baby, and that is explained how that can happen a little bit.
Yes.
But her desire to be strong for her baby, for the one she loves, and for Josh at certain moments, to a certain extent, that's also, to me, what we feel in those times of great personal weakness. I don't even want to call it guilt, but there's this kind of clamoring voice that's like, but you can't be weak. You have a baby depending on you. You have, you know, this person or that person who are counting on you, and there's no one else. So you cannot be weak right now. And yet, sometimes we can't be strong. And so that really uncomfortable place that I take Julia is a place where I've been, of being like, wow, I kind of don't want to be alive right now because this sucks too much. But I have 3 children and a husband and a sister with cancer who's suffering and clearly needs me, like, and her kids, my sister's kids, who I love so dearly. I had to be there for that. There were so many people I felt that I had to be there for. Not that there was no one else showing up, but you feel that tremendous sense of personal responsibility. And when that's happening at the same time as that rock bottom, I mean, it's crazy making. It feels like, what do you do with that? How do you summon that strength? And many people do. I think especially women end up being caregivers in so many of these situations with aging parents, or in times of sickness. That's another topic we could kind of go on about, that I've thought a lot about over the past few years, of like, why is it always the women? Why are we always the ones in charge of, like, death and all of the stuff around that? It's just often us. So wow, I went off on a total rabbit trail, but being in that state of, like, grief has beaten you down, and yet there's no one else to do the job that you have to do, is definitely something that was also cathartic, where Julia is the only one who can protect her baby, in her mind, at least. You know, she's the one who loves her baby, and if something happens to Julia, that baby is alone and not cared for. So her wrestling with how to pull that strength out of herself was a huge, another huge like personal inspiration moment, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's very relatable. I don't have children myself, but I have a lot of friends who are mothers. I have a mother, as many do.
As many, a lot of people listening to
yeah.
this probably have a
mother. But I've seen and I've read a lot of books that are about motherhood or focus heavily on motherhood and how mothers in particular are expected to, in a way, have endless patience and not get tired.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
How that's not a realistic expectation, but if you ever aren't those things, you get judgment from all sides, pretty much.
And internally, not just from the outside, but
mm-hmm.
we're judging ourselves so often.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know what to say about that other than like I don't know another way. Because you do love your kids so much and you do want to show up for them, and there are times that you just can't do it to your satisfaction, and that kind of messes with you at times. Messes with me, but
no, and it's a question I think we'll be wrestling with for as a species for a long time, but I think
agreed.
This book is a really interesting look at it in such a beautiful way with, again, Julia, who is a synth, is a really fascinating way where she's like, could I be a mother with endless patience who never gets tired if I just could change this part of myself? Like, she has that option more than a human being does. Right. And it's fascinating to kind of see that. And also her thinking like, but if, my daughter has a mother who is those things, who is seemingly perfect, or what a lot of human beings would define as perfect, is that going to hurt her when she's human to see me be all these things?
Right. So, and to compare herself to a mom who's quote unquote better, stronger than she is that a good example? Or the kids learn by seeing you be weak as well? I mean, we don't have that choice, but it was a very fun choice to like imagine, what if I did have the choice to be the strongest, to have unlimited strength and like you said, patience, and would I take that? Right now, I would say no, because I do think that would screw my kids up. But during cancer, I would have said yes. I would have chosen to be strong no matter what the cost, because I reached such a point of desperation. But right now I'm not desperate. So right now I'm like, oh, we can do it. We can be weak. We can be like, it's fine. It's fine. We're not at rock bottom right now.
Yeah. So, no, it is an interesting question. I know for myself right now, I would say yes, but I'm also not a parent to anything but some cats who I don't.
Wait, you would choose unlimited strength?
I absolutely would in a heartbeat. But I've also said I'm a person who, if I got like transported to a fantasy realm, would immediately get corrupted by dark magic. So I know something. I don't know why. That's just who I am.
You said earlier, like you'd be the robot who like rebels right away and is like, WTF, why? What's this all about?
I'm on
sense for you. I'm here for it.
I'm causing problems in my everyday life as a regular human enough that I know I'd cause worse problems if I had the opportunity. So, we are reaching near the end of this interview. It just felt like it's just flown by.
I know. There's so much we probably haven't covered.
Yeah, but I always like to ask, as one of my final questions, is there anything I didn't ask that you would like to talk about, or anything we missed that you enjoyed discussing?
Well, tell me if this is a question you still have for later, but more next books. I have more books coming.
Yes,
I want
absolutely.
people to know. So next summer, I have a book coming out with Penguin Random House UK, Trans World. Ideally, it will come to the US too. We'll see. Someone needs to buy it first. But it's called Beach Bodies, and it's a super, super fun thriller romance set at a fantastic resort in the Caribbean. And it was so fun to write. So keep an eye out for that next summer. And then next fall will be my second book with Mira, called The New Year's Party. And it's a locked room slightly more traditional locked room murder mystery. There are not robots. There's nothing robotic about it.
Yeah.
No sci-fi element, just murder. Mm-hmm. And that was a really fun one to write as well. The idea was getting a friend group together. So this was pulled a little bit from real life, not the characters, but my husband and I think for 10 years, got together with the same crowd of friends every year for New Year's. Wow. And it was a huge party. People would fly in for this party. There would be a dinner, fancy dinner. We would dress up. There would be a game like specifically designed for that evening. It was just, it was such a delight. Then we all started having kids and our lives got complicated and we stopped. Yeah. But I always thought, like, what would it be like to take that party up again after all this time has passed? Because it's been a ton of years. What would it be like to all see each other anymore or again? And then what if we put some murder in there? Like, that would make a fun murder mystery. Friend group, we're loyal, we're having fun. We haven't seen each other in a while. Now we've changed. It's time to kill someone. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it was super fun to write. It takes place in like 24 hours. And yeah, there's a little surprise in like who's dead. You see there's someone dead, but you don't know who. Yeah. So which one of them is going to die? And everyone has a motive. Surprise, surprise. So yeah, look out for that next fall as well.
Right. And quickly, we do have an audience question. So they're asking, Sky is asking, what did you find the easiest and or hardest about writing this story?
Hi, Sky. Oh gosh. The easiest, this is actually a really hard question. It seems like it shouldn't be.
No.
The easiest part, it came together without a lot of effort. I'm sorry, that sounds like such a cheap answer, but I've written like 12 books at this point, and they're not all like that. And I wish I knew. I wish I could say what made this one flow so well. The only idea I can come up with is like the spark of reality TV and synthetic person was so strong. It did feel like a blaze of like excitement that was fueling me. There was just a natural energy to that idea that made it easy to sit down to write, which is half the battle, right? Like sitting down and opening the laptop. So there you go. The inspiration made it easy to keep coming back. And then the hardest was just, it was the first thriller I had written. So the hardest was probably keeping track of who knew what. And especially as the timelines come together, who thought what based on what they knew, if that makes sense. Because in thrillers, usually different people know different pieces of information. So I did have spreadsheets for that. I had a couple of spreadsheets of like, okay, this person thinks this at this point, but then they think this, then this clue happens, then they think this, and this person thinks this. So in this scene, he's thinking this and she's thinking this. So that part was tricky. But once the spreadsheets came along, we got on track.
Yeah, and there were definitely a few moments where after I finished it and learned everything, I looked back on certain conversations and I was like, oh, that's what this character was kind of hinting at. And I just didn't understand that at the time. But now looking back, I know what they actually meant.
Excellent.
Yeah. So I think it's a book that you could even reread with the information you have by the end and come back and be like, wow.
Yeah. And when you reread it, just buy a fresh copy because that way it's not exactly the same book. You like what I did there?
Yes. And we also do have links to Buy Made for You from City Lit Books and the bookseller in the comments. So definitely check those out, everybody. And also thank you, Sky, for your question. This is a silly question, but I did want to ask, would Julia ever go on the proposal in paradise?
Ooh, sequel. Ding, 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 ding.
No, that's...
probably not. She's too busy being a mom. You become a mom, we get boring. We just sit at home and write about interesting things happening to other people. just kidding.
Yeah. No, The Bachelor in Paradise is my favorite iteration of the series. So I was like, I have to bring that up.
I don't know if I've seen Bachelor in Paradise. Did they just bring in like previously like rejected people? And
sometimes it's even previous leads from the show who have since broken up with their match. And every week you have to get a rose. It's like one gender goes at a time even though there have been a couple same-gender couples on it. And you have to get a rose from somebody to stay, and some people inevitably go home. So it's very chaotic.
Stressful. So stressful. Oh, no, so. Julia says no. Mm-hmm. She would like there to be a sequel, but she just can't do it.
Makes sense. But other than that, this is my final question is, what are you doing next and where can people find you?
Wow, people can find me on the internet. So I do have a very unique last name. So if you just type it in and manage to spell it semi-correctly, all my links should pop up. I have an author page on Facebook. I'm on Twitter as Jenna Schmena. I'm very active on Twitter because there's just so many writing people there. So that's fun. Yes. And then I'm on Instagram, jenna.satterthwaite.author. I have a Substack. Yes, sign up for my newsletter. Most of the time it's free. I did one paid post once, which was I think 2 days ago. Nice. But it's mostly free, and it's I'm a literary agent as well. So I talk a lot about publishing from kind of the different sides of my experience with it as an author, as an agent, all that fun stuff. Yeah. Publishing is so weird.
It's a unique.
It's very unique. It's a whole thing. So yeah, you can find me all over the internet. And what do I have next? The next 2 books: Beach Bodies, New Year's Party, and I need to start writing another one, but it's hard.
It is sometimes. Get those words on the page feels so challenging.
So challenging. And I don't generally write in the summer a lot because it's just too chaotic with the kids and
Chicago summers with this lake effect weather. It's a lot.
It's hot.
Yes.
We're also like going to the pool and going on like long weekend visits different places. So I almost never write novels in the summer. Just can't do it. My brain is like, but hopefully in the fall I'm gonna hunker down and start typing words again. Yeah. See the cringe? Yeah. The cringe. No, it'll be great. I'll find some new trauma to process. We'll be just fine.
Yes, you'll get it out there.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Have a good rest of your day. And thank you again, Jenna, for being on here. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe for more amazing authors like Jenna.
Thank you so much.